What the hell? I don't know, but I don't. What have I done? You are drunk. I want to. I am not. Yes, you are. No, sir.
There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana, and it's none of the government's business.
Country music has given us legends, unforgettable voices, and songs that feel like old friends. But behind the curtain of glittering awards and sold-out shows lies another reality, one where fame, pressure, and personal demons collide. In that hidden world, some of country's brightest stars found themselves spiraling into the shadows of addiction. The results? Shocking arrests, public meltdowns, heartbreaking losses, and stories so wild they've become part of country music lore. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the 16 most infamous junkies in country history. And trust me, these are tales you'll never forget. First up is Keith Whitley.
I'm no stranger to pain.
Keith Whitley's voice was pure country gold, smooth as Tennessee whiskey and able to cut straight to the heart. By the late 80s, he was on the fast track to becoming one of the genre's all-time greats. But behind that golden voice was a man in a fatal dance with the bottle. Born in Sandy Hook, Kentucky, Whitley grew up steeped in bluegrass and was drinking heavily before he was even out of his teens. When Nashville came calling, the habit wasn't just part of his lifestyle, it was part of his identity. Hits like Don't Close Your Eyes and When You Say Nothing at All made him a star, but the drinking only intensified. His marriage to country singer Lori Morgan was passionate but turbulent, with friends and family pleading for him to get help. On May 9, 1989, after a weekend of heavy drinking, Whitley was found dead in his home. His blood alcohol level was nearly 6 times the legal limit. He was just 34. Whitley's career was short, but his voice became immortal. A reminder of the brilliance that can be lost when addiction wins. Next on the list is George Jones.
First time I'd seen you smiling you.
George Jones' voice could break your heart in a single note, but his drinking nearly broke everything else. By the height of his career, his reputation for missing shows had earned him the nickname No-Show Jones. His struggles with alcohol were legendary. The most famous story? After his wife hid the car keys to keep him from buying booze, Jones rode a lawnmower miles to the liquor store. Fans laughed, but behind the humor was a man completely enslaved to the bottle. Marriages crumbled, promoters stopped booking him, and his reliability vanished, yet his voice never lost its magic. Eventually, Jones found sobriety, reclaiming his place as one of the greatest singers in country history. For many, he remains proof that even the most self-destructive artists can find a way back, if they survive long enough to try. Next up is Travis Tritt.
Well, here's a quarter of someone who cares.
From the first time Travis Tritt hit the stage, he stood out, a live wire performer with a rebellious streak. Anthems like Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares, and Trouble cemented him as one of country's most electric entertainers. But behind the swagger was a man caught in a tug-of-war with his own vices. Tritt's slide into substance abuse didn't happen in a flash. The 90s brought him fame, fortune, and a high-octane lifestyle. Endless touring, endless parties. The kind of life that looks glamorous until you're the one living it. Alcohol and drugs started as a way to unwind, but slowly became a daily habit. The changes were noticeable. On stage, there were flashes of slurred words, a duller edge to his once razor-sharp performances. Off stage, industry whispers questioned his reliability. Opportunities began to slip away. His personal life suffered too. Friends, colleagues, even family found the substance use a wedge that drove relationships apart. But unlike some of his peers, Tritt managed to step back before total collapse. He distanced himself from the destructive circles, refocused on his craft, and worked to rebuild both his reputation and his health. Today, he's a living reminder that some stories in country music don't have to end in tragedy, but they almost always come close. Up next is Glen Campbell.
She'll laugh when she reads the part that says I'm leaving.
Smooth, charming, and endlessly talented, Glen Campbell gave the world classics like Rhinestone Cowboy and Wichita Lineman. But behind the hits, his personal life was unraveling under the weight of addiction. In the 1970s, Campbell was everywhere, recording, touring, hosting TV shows, The pace was relentless, and he turned to alcohol and cocaine to keep going. At first, it was just fuel. Then it became the engine. As the habit deepened, the cracks appeared. He was late to shows. Sometimes he didn't make it at all. Performances became inconsistent. Relationships soured, and his high-profile romance with Tanya Tucker turned into a tabloid soap opera, fueled by their shared addictions. Legal trouble followed, DUI arrests, assault charges, each headline another blow to his image. But Campbell wasn't willing to let his story end in a spiral. He eventually sought help, sobered up, and returned to music. Even as Alzheimer's claimed his final years, fans remember him not only for his voice, but for the fight he waged to reclaim his life from addiction. Following up is Willie Nelson.
You were always on my mind.
Few names are as synonymous with country rebellion as Willie Nelson. His voice, his style, and his legendary laid-back persona made him a hero to fans and an outsider to Nashville's rulebook. Willie's substance of choice was no secret. He championed marijuana publicly for decades.
There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana, and it's none of the government's business.
But his easygoing attitude didn't keep trouble away. Law enforcement caught him with it more than once, and those run-ins only fed his outlaw image. His biggest crisis, though, came not from drugs, but from the IRS. In the 90s, Nelson found himself tens of millions in debt after a tax debacle. The government seized his assets, including his beloved ranch. For most, it would have been career-ending, but not Willie. He recorded an album specifically to pay back his debt, and with help from fans and friends, he climbed out of the hole. His drug use never derailed him the way it did others, but it cemented his status as country's most unapologetic outlaw. Following up is David Allan Coe.
Darling, you never even called me by my name.
David Allan Coe didn't just sing about living outside the law, he was the lawless lifestyle. Before country music ever knew his name, Coe had already spent years in reform schools and prison, where he claimed to have learned to play guitar behind bars. That rough edge would become his signature. When his music career took off in the 1970s, so did his vices. Drugs and alcohol became constant companions, fueling volatile outbursts and unpredictable behavior. He clashed with promoters, got into fights, and developed a reputation for being both brilliant and impossible to manage. Coe's lyrics often blurred the line between fact and bravado, but his legal troubles were all too real. Arrests, lawsuits, and constant brushes with authority. Still, his hardcore outlaw image drew a fiercely loyal fan base that embraced his no-apologies persona. Through the highs and lows, Coe left an undeniable mark on outlaw country. He embodied its rebellious spirit to the extreme, living proof that sometimes the man is every bit as wild as the music he makes. The next is Townes Van Zandt.
I swim the seas for to ease your pain.
Townes Van Zandt wasn't a household name like some of his peers, but among songwriters, he was royalty, a poet who could break your heart with a single line. Songs like Pancho and Lefty and If I Needed You proved his genius, but behind the haunting melodies was a man locked in a lifelong battle with his own demons. Townes' troubles started young. Diagnosed with manic depression in his teens, he underwent electroshock therapy, a treatment that some say damaged his memory. Music became his outlet, but so did alcohol, heroin, and cocaine. As the years went by, addiction wasn't just a part of his life. It was the backdrop. He'd vanish for days on benders, blow through royalty checks in a matter of hours, and sometimes show up to gigs so intoxicated he could barely get through a set. Friends and fans never knew which Townes they'd get. The captivating troubadour who could silence a room with a ballad, or the disoriented drifter who seemed one step from disappearing completely. His health deteriorated, his relationships frayed, and stability was never in the cards. On January 1st, 1997, the same date Hank Williams Sr. died decades earlier, Townes Van Zandt passed away at just 52. For those who loved his music, it was the closing chapter of a life that burned as bright as it was brief. His songs remain timeless, but so does the shadow of the man who wrote them. Coming up next is Merle Haggard.
I'm coming home, and if I can find me a flight this evening, the OK from Muskoge's coming home.
Merle Haggard's life read like the very songs he wrote. gritty, raw, and steeped in hard lessons. Born during the Great Depression, he lost his father at just 9 years old. The grief and instability that followed pushed him toward petty crime, and by his teens he was in and out of juvenile detention. At 20, Haggard's wild streak caught up with him when he tried to rob a diner and ended up serving time in San Quentin. It was there, watching Johnny Cash perform for inmates, that he decided to change his path. When he got out, music became his salvation, but it didn't erase his demons. As fame took hold in the 1960s and 70s, the temptations of the road were impossible to ignore. Heavy drinking and drug use crept into his life, threatening the career he had fought so hard to build. His rebellious image only added fuel to the fire, and while fans loved the outlaw swagger, those closest to him saw the toll it was taking. Haggard eventually fought his way to sobriety, transforming his rough past into some of the most authentic and enduring songs in country music history. His story proved that even the hardest roads can lead to redemption, if you're willing to walk them. At the halfway point, we have Steve Earle. Steve Earle's songwriting was as raw and unflinching as the life he lived. By the time the 1990s rolled around, he was a critical darling, a Texas troubadour with a gift for turning grit into gold. But behind the scenes, heroin had sunk its hooks deep. Earle's drug use didn't just strain his relationships, it derailed his entire career. Missed shows, erratic behavior, and run-ins with the law became the norm. By the mid-90s, his addiction had escalated to the point where he was facing multiple arrests for drug possession and weapons charges. The man who once packed clubs and inspired a generation of songwriters was now sleeping in jail cells and disappearing for weeks at a time. It took hard time behind bars and multiple trips through rehab before Earle began to claw his way back. When he reemerged, it was with a new lease on life and a renewed focus on his craft. Albums like Train A-Comin' and The Mountain proved that the fire was still there, maybe stronger than ever. Steve Earle's comeback became part of his legend, a stark reminder that even in country music, the road to redemption can be long, hard, and paved with second chances, if you're lucky enough to get them. Next stop is Randy Travis.
You leave this world behind you. It's what you leave behind you when you go.
Once hailed as one of the purest voices in country music, Randy Travis was the golden boy of the 1980s. His deep, heartfelt delivery made him a household name. His albums sold in the millions, and awards piled up at his feet. But behind the chart toppers and standing ovations, Travis was waging a private war. The seeds of his downfall weren't planted overnight. As the fame grew, so did the pressure. And like so many in the cutthroat music business, he started leaning on alcohol to take the edge off. When his decades-long marriage to manager Elizabeth Hatcher Travis imploded in 2010, the emotional blow sent him deeper into the bottle. The cracks started to show in public. Fans who once saw him as squeaky clean now watched in disbelief as headlines turned ugly. The most infamous incident came in 2012, when Texas police found Travis drunk, disoriented, and completely naked, lying in the street after a DUI incident. The media had a field day, and the image of the wholesome country star was shattered. Professionally, the consequences were brutal. Missed opportunities, a tarnished brand, and a body buckling under the strain. Then, in 2013, fate struck even harder. A massive stroke nearly claimed his life. Doctors weren't sure if he'd survive, let alone sing again. And yet, Travis fought. Though he never fully regained his speech, he's appeared publicly since, becoming a symbol of grit and survival to the fans who never stopped loving him. Coming up next is the renowned Billy Joe Shaver.
They say my mammy left me day before she had me. Says she hit the road and never once looked back.
If outlaw country had a beating heart, Billy Joe Shaver was it. His rough-edged songwriting defined the genre, but his life was as wild as the music. Shaver's struggles began in a tough Texas childhood. Music became his escape, but so did booze and drugs. By the 1970s, as his career took off, the outlaw lifestyle swallowed him whole. Parties, benders, and erratic behavior became part of his brand. Missed shows and messy relationships followed, but his lowest point came in 2007, when he shot a man outside a bar in Texas. He claimed self-defense, but the trial kept him in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Through it all, Shaver kept writing and singing. In later years, he found ways to manage his demons, proving that even the wildest outlaws could find a measure of peace. Next on the list is Hank Williams Sr. Hank Williams Sr. wasn't just a country star. He was the blueprint. In less than a decade, he wrote and recorded songs that would shape the genre forever. But while the world saw a charismatic young performer with a golden touch, Hank was quietly losing a battle with pain, addiction, and self-destruction. Born in rural Alabama in 1923, Hank grew up poor and sickly, suffering from spina bifida occulta, a spinal condition that left him with chronic back pain. By his teens, he was already self-medicating with alcohol, and when doctors later prescribed morphine for the pain, it became part of his daily life. As his fame exploded with hits like "Your Cheatin' Heart," "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry," and "Hey Good Lookin'," the pressure of constant touring and his volatile personal life only fueled his dependence. Missed shows and drunken performances began tarnishing his reputation, and his erratic behavior cost him a coveted spot at the Grand Ole Opry. On January 1st, 1953, Hank Williams Sr. was found dead in the backseat of a Cadillac on the way to a concert in West Virginia. He was just 29 years old with alcohol and morphine in his system. His short life left a towering legacy and a warning about how even the brightest flames can burn out far too soon. Up next, Waylon Jennings.
But I can say I've never intentionally hurt anyone.
Waylon Jennings wasn't just part of the outlaw country movement. He helped create it. With his gravelly voice, leather-clad swagger, and refusal to bow to Nashville's rules, he became the living embodiment of rebellion. But his greatest fight wasn't with the music industry. It was with cocaine. By the mid-1970s, Jennings was one of the biggest stars in country music, cranking out hits and selling out arenas. The schedule was brutal, and cocaine became his fuel. At his worst, he admitted to spending thousands of dollars a day on the drug, keeping it close at hand to get through endless recording sessions and tours. In 1977, his high-flying lifestyle came crashing down when federal agents intercepted a package of cocaine sent to a Nashville studio where Jennings was recording. Though charges were eventually dropped, the arrest was a wake-up call, and at least on paper. The habit still lingered for years, taking a toll on his health, his relationships, and his ability to perform. Eventually, Jennings decided enough was enough. He quit cocaine and reined in his hard-living ways, outlasting many of his peers who didn't get the same second chance. By the time he passed in 2002, Waylon's legacy was secure, a legend who proved that even the most unbreakable outlaws could find redemption. Coming up next, Tammy Wynette.
I know it can be fun.
Tammy Wynette, the first lady of country music, owned the stage with her rich voice and raw emotion. Songs like "Stand By Your Man" made her an icon, but behind the rhinestones was a woman quietly battling an enemy that didn't care how many records she sold. Unlike many who slide into addiction through the party scene, Wynette's dependence began in the doctor's office. Chronic health problems and repeated surgeries left her in constant pain, and prescription painkillers seemed like the only way to keep performing. At first, they were a necessity. Then they became a crutch. Touring was grueling, and the pills became her way to power through. Soon, she wasn't just taking them for pain, she was taking them to function. Her voice, once crystal clear, sometimes carried a tired edge. On stage, she occasionally looked frail, unsteady. Whispers started to spread. Her personal life was just as stormy. Multiple marriages, including her famously volatile one to George Jones, were colored by addiction on both sides. When she passed in 1998, her body bore the scars of years of medical complications and chemical dependence. For her fans, it was a painful reminder that sometimes the biggest battles are fought off stage, far from the spotlight. Second to the last is Johnny Paycheck.
Don't take her, she's all I've got.
Johnny Paycheck lived up to his outlaw reputation in every way possible. Best known for his working-class anthem, "Take This Job and Shove It," Paycheck's music spoke to rebellion, but his real life often went far beyond the lyrics. Fame in the 1970s brought him hit records and a loyal fan base, but it also opened the door to a lifestyle fueled by drugs, alcohol, and chaos. Cocaine became a constant, feeding a temper that could erupt without warning. His erratic behavior alienated industry insiders and turned once promising opportunities into burned bridges. The spiral hit rock bottom in 1985 when Paycheck got into a barroom argument in Ohio and shot a man in the head.
Pulled a gun to to scare him off. And the gun, in reality, what really happened, the gun went off.
The victim survived, but Paycheck was convicted and sentenced to prison. He served nearly 2 years, a stint that forced him to confront the addictions and impulses that had nearly destroyed him. When he got out, Paycheck tried to stage a comeback, but the years of excess had taken their toll on his health and career. Still, he remained a symbol of country music's wild side, proof that sometimes the outlaw life comes with a price you can't pay back. Last but not least is Hank Williams Jr.
Lord, I guess I went and broke their family tradition.
Born into country royalty, Hank Williams Jr. inherited both his father's talent and his troubles. The son of Hank Sr. faced the weight of impossible expectations from day one. Early in his career, he tried to follow in his father's footsteps musically, but the shadow was too long. Determined to make his own mark, Hank Jr. embraced the outlaw image, and with it, heavy drinking and drug use. Then came 1975. A climbing trip in Montana turned catastrophic when he fell nearly 500 feet down Ajax Peak. His face and skull were shattered, requiring multiple reconstructive surgeries. The pain was excruciating, and painkillers became part of his daily life. What started as medical necessity morphed into a full-blown dependency. Hank Jr.'s drinking escalated, his drug use made headlines, and his unpredictable behavior strained relationships in the business. Still, his rebellious persona kept a loyal fan base, even as it pushed him closer to self-destruction. In time, he would find ways to pull back from the brink, proving he wasn't just living in his father's shadow, but writing his own complicated legacy. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't seen our video on the downfall of the biggest jerks in country music, click on the video you see on the screen.